The garage door rumbled shut behind Harlan Knox's truck as he pulled into the driveway of their Phoenix subdivision home. The dashboard clock read 8:47 p.m. Another 12-hour day managing logistics for Carter's supply chain company, dealing with delayed shipments from Long Beach and frustrated clients who wanted miracles that he sat in the driver's seat for 30 seconds, letting the engine tick as it cooled. Through the kitchen window, he could see the blue glow of a phone screen. The front door stuck slightly as he pushed it open. The house smelled like takeout containers and the faint chemical scent of Shirley's nail polish. "I'm home," he called out. Shirley looked up from the couch for exactly 2 seconds before her eyes dropped back to her phone. Her thumb moved in quick, practice swipes. The sound of TikTok videos filled the silence between them. "Hey," she said without looking up. "Food's in the kitchen." Harlan set his keys on the counter and found a bag from that Mediterranean place Shirley liked. Still warm. He opened the styrofoam container and found chicken shawarma that had been sitting for at least an hour. "Where's Avery?" "Homework. Upstairs." Harlan climbed the stairs and knocked on his son's door. "Hey, buddy." "Dad." Avery looked up from his desk, pencil in hand. Math worksheet spread in front of him. "I finished my reading already. Just got multiplication left. Need help?" "I think I got it." Avery worked through another problem, his tongue poking out slightly as he concentrated. At 8 years old, he had Harlan's dark hair and serious expression, but something fragile about him too. The heart condition made him tire easily, made every normal childhood activity a calculated risk. "How was school today?" "Good. Tommy's mom picked me up again." "Mom had a meeting." "Another meeting." Harlan nodded and ruffled his son's hair. "Don't stay up too late." Back downstairs, Shirley had moved to the kitchen island, phone propped against a water bottle as she watched someone's makeup tutorial. She wore yoga pants and an oversized shirt that said Boss Babe in gold letters. "Long day?" Harlan asked, opening the refrigerator. Conference call with the brand team. Then lunch with Jess and Mika. You know how it is." He knew how it was. Shirley's job as a social media consultant involved a lot of what she called networking, and what looked to him like extended brunches and shopping trips that somehow counted as work. "Want to watch something together? There's that show you mentioned." Shirley glanced up from her phone. "Maybe tomorrow? I'm meeting Whitney and some friends later. Girls' night at that new place downtown. On a Tuesday, it's happy hour until 9. She finally set the phone down and looked at him directly. "I've been in the house all day, Harlan. I need to get out. You just said you had lunch with." "That was work." Her voice carried a sharp edge. "I'm allowed to have a social life." Harlan ate his cold shawarma and didn't respond. The television murmured in the background, some reality show about people renovating houses. Shirley picked up her phone again. "Avery's pickup tomorrow is at 3:30, he said. "I know the schedule. His cardiology appointment is Thursday at 10. I have in my calendar." "Do you?" Shirley looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just making sure." The tension stretched between them like a wire about to snap. Shirley's phone buzzed with a text, and she grabbed it immediately. "I should get ready," she said, sliding off the bar stool. "Don't wait up." Harlan watched her disappear upstairs. 20 minutes later, she came back down in a black dress he'd never seen before and perfume that wasn't the one he'd bought her for Christmas. "See you later," she said, already moving toward the garage. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam. Wednesday evening, Harlan stood at the stove, stirring pasta sauce, while Avery set the table. They developed this routine over the past few months, Harlan cooking, Avery helping, both of them working around Shirley's schedule. "Can I have extra cheese?" Avery asked, folding napkins the way Harlan had taught him. "As much as you want, buddy." Shirley rushed in at 6:15, phone pressed to her ear. No, the engagement metrics are way down from last quarter. We need to pivot the content strategy." She held up one finger to indicate she'd be another minute. Harlan served the plates. Avery climbed into his chair and waited. Sorry. Shirley finally ended the call and sat down. "Crisis at work. You know how it is." They ate in relative quiet, Avery telling them about his science project on solar systems. Shirley nodded at appropriate intervals while checking messages on her phone. "Earth is the third planet," Avery explained, twirling spaghetti around his fork. and Mars is fourth, and his fork clattered to the plate. Avery's eyes rolled back, and he slumped forward. Avery. Harlan was out of his chair instantly, catching his son before he hit the table. Avery. The boy's body was limp, his skin pale gray. No response that Harlan's Marine training kicked in. Check airway. Check pulse. Weak but present. He lifted Avery easily, already moving toward the garage. Call 911, he told Shirley, who stood frozen by the table. Tell them we're going to Phoenix Children's. 8-year-old with congenital heart defect. Unconscious. Is he? Make the call. Harlan laid Avery across the back seat and drove faster than he should have, running 2 red lights. In the rearview mirror, he watched his son's chest rise and fall in shallow, irregular breaths. The ER team was waiting when he pulled up. They'd dealt with Avery before. This wasn't his first cardiac episode, but it was the worst. A nurse named Miguel helped transfer him to a gurney. When did it start? Dr. Patterson asked as they rushed through automatic doors. About 8 minutes ago. He was eating dinner, talking normally, then just collapsed. Previous episodes, 3 in the past year. Last one was 6 months ago. They wheeled Avery into a trauma bay. Harlan stood outside, watching through glass as they attached monitors and started in 4. His son looked impossibly small under the hospital lights. His phone buzzed. A text from Shirley. How is he? At the hospital now. Harlan looked around the waiting area. No sign of her. 20 minutes later, Dr. Patterson came out, still wearing gloves. We've got him stable, but we need to run more tests. His heart rhythm is irregular, more irregular than we've seen before. What does that mean? It means we need to consider surgical intervention. Tonight. The words hit like cold water. Surgery. It's a procedure we've discussed before. Implanting a device to regulate his heartbeat. We've been monitoring him, hoping we could wait until he was older, but his condition is progressing faster than we'd like. Harlan nodded. Do it. I need to explain the risks. Do whatever you have to do. Dr. Patterson walked him through the procedure, the potential complications, the recovery time. Harlan signed papers with hands that remained perfectly steady despite everything crumbling inside him. At 9:30 p.m., they wheeled Avery into surgery. Harlan sat in the waiting area and called Shirley. Hello. Background noise, music, voices, laughter. Avery's in critical condition. They're prepping him for surgery now. Silence on the other end. Then, surgery? What kind of surgery? Heart surgery, Shirley. They have to implant a device to regulate his heartbeat. It's emergency surgery. Wait, but I've got NBA tickets tonight. A nervous laugh. I have to go, right? I mean, the tickets were expensive, and... Harlan ended the call. He stared at the phone for a full minute, then turned it face down on the chair beside him. The waiting room television was tuned to ESPN. Harlan tried to focus on a magazine, then his phone, then just his hands. Nothing worked. Every few minutes, a nurse updated him surgery proceeding normally, everything going as planned. At 10:45 p.m., the basketball game came on. Phoenix Suns versus Lakers. Harlan wasn't really watching until the camera panned across the crowd during a timeout. Section 112. Premium seats, 20 rows up from the court. There she was. Shirley sat next to a man in a burgundy polo shirt, laughing at something he'd said. The man leaned over and said something in her ear. She threw her head back, genuinely delighted. The camera lingered for exactly 4 seconds before cutting to a commercial for truck tires. Harlan knew that man. Miles Redford. High school teammate from the football team. They'd kept in touch over the years, Christmas cards, the occasional beer when Miles was in town. Miles owned 3 car dealerships across Arizona and never let anyone forget it. Harlan sat perfectly still as the truth settled into place. The late nights, the new clothes, the sudden interest in girls' nights, the way she'd started keeping her phone face down. His son was having open-heart surgery 20 miles away, and his wife was at a basketball game with another man. The camera showed section 112 again during the third quarter. This time, Miles had his arm around the back of Shirley's seat. Her hand rested on his thigh. Harlan felt something lock shut inside his chest. Not rage that would come later. This was something colder, more permanent. Dr. Patterson appeared in scrubs at 12:30 a.m. The surgery went perfectly. Avery's in recovery. You can see him in about an hour. Thank you. He's going to be fine, Mr. Knox. The device will regulate his heartbeat. He'll live a completely normal life. Harlan nodded and shook the doctor's hand. On the television, the Lakers had won by 12 points. When Shirley finally arrived at 1:15 a.m., she smelled like arena beer and someone else's cologne. How is he? She asked, slightly out of breath. Alive. Harlan didn't look up from his magazine. You missed it. I came as soon as I could. Traffic was. He's in recovery. You can see him at 2. Shirley sat down beside him, and he could feel her trying to read his expression. Harlan, I'm sorry. I should have. Should have what? Should have come sooner. Yeah. He closed the magazine and stood up. You should have. He walked to the vending machines and bought a coffee he didn't want. When he came back, Shirley was checking her phone. 20 minutes later, a nurse led them to the recovery room. Avery looked small and pale against the white sheets, wires running from his chest to various machines. But his breathing was steady, and a monitor showed a regular heartbeat for the first time in months. Hi, buddy, Harlan said softly. Avery's eyes fluttered open. Dad, I'm right here. It doesn't hurt. Good. That's good. Shirley stood on the other side of the bed, and Avery turned toward her. Mom? You came too? Of course I came. She reached for his hand. How do you feel? Tired, but good tired. Like after swimming. They stayed until visiting hours ended at 3 a.m. In the elevator, Shirley tried again. Harlan, about tonight. Don't. I need to explain. No. He looked at her directly for the first time since she'd arrived. You don't. The elevator opened at the parking garage. They walked to their separate cars in silence. Home. Harlan went to the guest bedroom and closed the door. Shirley got home 20 minutes after Harlan. He heard her car in the driveway, heard her come upstairs, heard her pause outside the guest room door. She didn't knock. Thursday morning, she found him in the kitchen making coffee at 6 a.m. We should talk, she said. About what? About last night. About us. Harlan poured coffee into his travel mug. Avery gets discharged at 10. His follow-up is next Wednesday. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. He grabbed his keys and headed for the garage. At the door, he turned back. Avery's alive. You missed it. No yelling. No accusations. Just a statement of fact that hit harder than any argument could have at the hospital. Avery was sitting up in bed, picking at scrambled eggs. The color had returned to his cheeks, and he smiled when he saw Harlan. Dad, look. He pointed to the small bulge under his hospital gown. I'm bionic now. How does it feel? Different. Like there's a robot helping my heart work. Dr. Patterson walked them through the discharge instructions. No strenuous activity for 2 weeks. Follow-up appointments every month for the first year. Signs to watch for. Where's Mom? Avery asked as they walked to the car. She had to work. It wasn't entirely a lie. Shirley had texted that morning about an urgent client emergency. Harlan had responded with okay, and nothing else. Home. Harlan set Avery up on the couch with movies and snacks within reach. His son fell asleep during the second movie, exhausted from the ordeal. When Shirley came home that evening, she found them both on the couch, Avery curled against his father's side, Harlan reading a book about World War II logistics. How was your day? She asked quietly. Fine. And Avery? Ask him yourself. Avery stirred and smiled at his mother. Mom, I got a robot heart. I heard. Shirley sat on the coffee table, facing them. Does it hurt? Not really. Dad made grilled cheese for lunch. That's nice. The conversation felt like they were all speaking through glass. Polite but distant. When Avery went upstairs to brush his teeth, Shirley tried again. Harlan, we need to. I'm sleeping in here tonight. Avery might need something. It was a reasonable explanation. Also a complete lie, and they both knew it. Friday, Saturday, Sunday passed the same way. Harlan took care of Avery during the day. Shirley came and went with vague explanations about work and friends. At night, Harlan slept in the guest room. By Monday, the arrangement felt permanent. Tuesday morning, after Shirley left for her client breakfast, Harlan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and a cup of coffee. Time to do some homework that he started with their shared iCloud calendar. Shirley had been sloppy about privacy settings. Her appointments synced automatically with his phone. Lunch with Jessica last Thursday had been at Greyhawk Golf Club from 11:30 to 3 o'clock. Expensive place for a casual lunch. He cross-referenced it with her Instagram story from that day, a photo of salmon and champagne with the caption, "Treating myself." Hashtag executive lunch. But Jessica's own Instagram showed her at a yoga class at 1 p.m. that same day that he scrolled through more entries. Girls' Night from 2 weeks ago had been listed as Rooftop 25, a trendy bar downtown. But Whitney's Instagram story from that night showed her at home with her husband, grading papers point 3 weeks back, client dinner at the Phoenician Resort. Shirley had posted a photo of the resort's pool area at sunset. But if he looked closely at the reflection in her wine glass, he could see someone else, a man in a burgundy shirt, sitting across from her. Miles wore burgundy shirts like they were his uniform. Harlan opened a new browser tab and searched for Miles Redford's social media. The man wasn't subtle about his wealth photos of his BMW, his house in Scottsdale, his boat on Lake Powell that on the same night as Shirley's client dinner. Miles had posted a photo from the Phoenician's restaurant with the caption, "Great dinner with an old friend." Harlan leaned back in his chair. They weren't even trying to hide it. He spent the next hour building a timeline. Coffee meetings that matched Miles' lunch breaks. Shopping trips that ended at the same restaurants where Miles posted photos. Work events that happened on nights when Miles was posting from bars and clubs. The pattern went back 4 months, 4 months of lies. For months of urgent client meetings and networking events and girls' nights that were really dates with his former teammate. Harlan closed the laptop and went upstairs to check on Avery, who was napping. His son's face was peaceful, the heart monitor on his nightstand beeping steadily. His phone buzzed. A text from Shirley. "Late meeting tonight. Don't wait up." He responded, "Okay." At 9 p.m., he checked Miles' Instagram story. A video from a wine bar called Vintage 30 miles away. Smooth jazz playing in the background. A woman's laugh that sounded familiar. Harlan didn't need to see more. Whitney knocked on the door Saturday morning at 10 a.m., carrying a bag from the bagel place Avery liked. "Thought you guys might want breakfast," she said, but her eyes searched Harlan's face like she was looking for damage. Whitney was 3 years younger than Shirley, but infinitely more mature. High school English teacher, married to a decent guy named David, the kind of person who remembered birthdays and always brought something when she visited. "Avery's upstairs playing video games," Harlan said, accepting the bag. "Doctor says he can start normal activities next week." "Good. That's really good." Whitney followed him to the kitchen. "Where's Shirley?" "Yoga class." "On Saturday morning?" Harlan shrugged and started arranging bagels on plates. Whitney watched him work, and he could feel her deciding whether to say something. "Harlan, yeah, is everything okay? Between you and Shirley." "Why do you ask?" "She's been different lately. Distracted. And last week at dinner, she kept checking her phone every 2 minutes. Work's been stressful for her." Whitney sat on a bar stool and studied his face. "You're sleeping in the guest room." It wasn't a question. She'd probably noticed when she used the bathroom upstairs, his clothes hanging in the guest room closet, his books on the nightstand. "Avery had surgery Tuesday. I wanted to be close in case he needed anything." "Harlan." Whitney's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm not stupid." He stopped arranging bagels and looked at her directly. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to tell me what's going on." "What?" "Because you look like someone died. Because Avery mentioned that Mom's been going out a lot. Because my sister has been acting weird for months, and I'm worried about you." Harlan considered his options. Whitney was family, but she was Shirley's family first. Anything he said could get back to his wife, that on the other hand, Whitney was sharp. If she noticed something was wrong, other people probably had too. "You know Miles Redford?" he asked. Whitney's face went very still. "Yeah, I know Miles." "How well?" "Well enough." She was quiet for a long moment. "Harlan, what do you think is going on?" "I think you already know." Whitney closed her eyes. "Shit, how long have you known?" "I didn't know. I suspected." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "I saw them together at that new place on Central. 3 weeks ago. They were close." "How close?" "Holding hands. Kissing." Whitney's voice was barely above a whisper. "I didn't know what to do. She's my sister." "What?" "But your family too. And Avery doesn't deserve this." They sat in silence for a minute. Upstairs, they could hear Avery talking to his video game characters. "What are you going to do?" Whitney asked. "I don't know yet. Do you want me to talk to her?" "No." Harlan's voice was firm. "This stays between us." Whitney nodded. "Harlan, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. This isn't right." "I know. And if you need anything at all, you call me." Okay. That evening, after Whitney left and Avery was in bed, Harlan's phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. "This is Whitney's real number. Shirley doesn't know I have it. They've been seeing each other for months. I didn't want to be involved, but Avery deserves better." Harlan stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Thank you. She's planning something. I don't know what, but be careful." Monday morning, Harlan took a sick day and drove to the bank. He'd been thinking about this all weekend, and it was time to start playing defense. "I'd like to transfer funds from our joint savings to my personal account," he told the banker, a middle-aged woman named Patricia who'd handled their mortgage. "How much are we talking about?" $60,000. Half of what's in there. It was perfectly legal. Joint account meant either party could access the funds. But Harlan wanted documentation showing he'd only taken what was rightfully his. "Any particular reason for the transfer?" "Financial planning. Diversifying our assets." Patricia processed the paperwork without further questions. Within an hour, Harlan had secured half their savings in an account that only he could access. Next stop, the lawyer's office. Brian Shun had handled their house refinance 2 years ago. Decent guy, former Marine like Harlan, understanding of military approaches to problems. "I need to understand my legal position," Harlan explained. Hypothetically, if my marriage ended, what would happen with custody? Property division? That sort of thing." Brian leaned back in his chair. "Well, hypothetically, Arizona is a community property state. Assets acquired during marriage get split 50-50 unless there's a prenup. There isn't, and it's pretty straightforward. As for custody, courts prefer joint arrangements unless there's evidence of unfitness or neglect. What counts as evidence? Documented neglect, substance abuse, failure to prioritize the child's medical needs." Brian studied Harlan's face. "Is this hypothetical conversation about to become real?" "Maybe. Then you should start documenting everything. Doctor's appointments, school pickup times, who handles medical emergencies. Build a paper trail showing you the primary caregiver." Harlan nodded. "What about the house? Who's on the deed?" "Both of us. Then it gets split, unless you can prove you contributed more to the purchase or improvements." Actually, Harlan realized that might not be true. During the refinance, Shirley had been traveling for work. She'd signed a power of attorney, letting him handle the paperwork. If he remembered correctly, the new deed had some complicated language about ownership percentages. "Can you pull the file from our refinance?" Brian spent 20 minutes digging through records. When he found it, he smiled. "Well, this is interesting. Based on the down payment structure and your military VA loan benefits, you actually own 70% of the house. Your wife owns 30%. How's that possible? You provided the entire down payment from your military savings, and the VA loan is in your name only. During the refinance, we restructured the ownership to reflect actual contributions." Harlan didn't remember that conversation, but apparently Shirley had signed off on it without reading the details. "So hypothetically," Harlan said, "if we divorced, I'd keep most of the house." "Hypothetically, yes. Assuming she doesn't contest the ownership structure." Wednesday afternoon, Harlan sat in his truck outside Avery's school, waiting for pickup. He'd started handling all the school runs after Avery's surgery, and he documented each one in a notebook he kept in the glove compartment. 3:30 p.m. Picked up Avery from Desert Ridge Elementary. Shirley had client meeting. His phone rang. "Dr. Patterson's office." "Mr. Knox? We need to reschedule Avery's appointment for tomorrow. Can you do Friday at 2 p.m. instead?" "Yes, that works. And just to confirm, should we send appointment reminders to both parents?" "Send them to me. I handle all his medical appointments." "Perfect. We'll see you Friday." Harlan made a note. "Hospital confirms I'm primary contact for all medical care." That evening, Shirley came home at 9 p.m. with shopping bags from Nordstrom. "New client presentation tomorrow," she explained, showing off a black dress. "Have to look the part." "What kind of client?" Lifestyle brand. Very high-end. She held the dress up to herself in the hallway mirror. This was expensive, but it's an investment. How much? It doesn't matter. This client could change everything for me. Harlan nodded and went to check on Avery's homework. In his notebook, he wrote, Shirley spent $400 plus on clothes for client meeting. Same day as Miles' Instagram post about important dinner meeting. Thursday night, Shirley's client presentation ran until midnight. Miles posted Instagram stories from a wine bar downtown at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., and 11:30 p.m. Friday morning, Harlan called Carter Briggs at work. I need a favor, he said. Name it. How hard would it be to transfer me to the Austin office? Carter was quiet for a moment. Personal reasons? Yeah. Give me a week. I'll make some calls. Saturday night, Harlan cooked steaks on the grill while Avery helped make salad. The boy's energy had returned almost completely. His new heart device was working perfectly. Shirley joined them for dinner, which had become unusual enough that Avery commented on it. It's nice when we all eat together, he said, cutting his steak into careful pieces. We should do it more often, Shirley agreed, though she still checked her phone twice during the meal. Good news at work today, Harlan said casually. Carter's putting me up for a performance bonus. Oh yeah. Shirley set down her phone. How much? $75,000. Before taxes. Shirley's eyes widened. Seriously, company's had a good year. He's rewarding the management team. What do you find out for sure? Next month. But he seemed pretty confident. That's incredible, honey. Shirley reached across the table and squeezed his hand. We could finally redo the kitchen. Or take that trip to Hawaii you mentioned. Yeah, we could do a lot of things. The next morning, Shirley was unusually cheerful. She made pancakes for breakfast and suggested they spend the day at the zoo. As a family, she said, we haven't done that in forever. They went to the Phoenix Zoo, and for 6 hours, it almost felt normal. Shirley put her phone away and focused on Avery, taking pictures of him feeding giraffes and laughing at the monkey exhibit. This is nice, she said as they walked back to the car. We should do this more often. Yeah, Harlan agreed. We should. That night, after Avery was in bed, Shirley suggested they watch a movie together. Like old times, she said, curling up next to him on the couch. Harlan didn't pull away, but he didn't relax either. This sudden attention felt calculated, like she was working toward something. Monday morning provided the answer. Harlan was drinking coffee when Shirley came downstairs, already dressed for work. I've been thinking, she said, pouring herself coffee. About us. What about us? We've been distant lately. Since Avery's surgery. Have we? Don't play dumb. She sat across from him at the kitchen table. We both know things haven't been right between us. Harlan waited. Maybe we need some space, she continued, to figure things out. What kind of space? I don't know. A trial separation? Just for a few months. Give us both time to think about what we want. What brought this on? I just think we've been going through the motions. Living like roommates instead of married people. And you think separating would help? It might. We could date each other again. Remember why we fell in love. Harlan sipped his coffee and considered her proposal. What about Avery? We'd share custody. 50-50. He could stay here during your weeks, and I'd get a place nearby for mine. He just had major surgery. That's why we'd ease into it. Make sure he's comfortable with the arrangement. You've thought this through. I've been thinking about it for weeks. I bet you have, Harlan thought. Let me think about it. Really? Shirley seemed surprised by his calm response. You're not going to fight me on this? If you think we need space, maybe you're right. That afternoon, Harlan called Carter back. How's the Austin transfer looking? Good news. They want you to start in 6 weeks. Same position, 15% pay bump. Perfect. You sure about this, Harlan? It's a big move. I'm sure. That evening, Miles posted an Instagram story from a furniture store, looking at apartment setups with the caption, New Beginnings. Whitney called Harlan at work on Thursday morning. Can you meet me for coffee? It's important. They met at a place near her school, far enough from their neighborhood that they wouldn't run into anyone they knew. I need to tell you something, Whitney said without preamble. And you're not going to like it. Go ahead. They're looking at apartments together. Shirley and Miles. How do you know? My friend Kate works at a property management company downtown. She saw them last weekend, touring a two-bedroom at the Lexington. Shirley used her maiden name on the application. Harlan absorbed this information. Anything else? There's more. Whitney looked miserable. Kate heard them talking to the leasing agent about school districts. For Avery. The coffee shop suddenly felt too warm. What did they say? They're planning to fight for full custody. Miles told the agent that you're unstable, something about PTSD from the military, making you an unfit father. The words hit like a physical blow. Harlan set down his coffee cup very carefully. They're going to claim you can't handle Avery's medical needs. Whitney continued. That you're cold and emotionally distant, and that it's affecting his development. Is that what Shirley told him? I don't know. But Kate said Miles seemed confident they'd get full custody. Harlan stared out the window at the parking lot. Everything made sense now. The sudden interest in separation. The emphasis on 50-50 custody as a starting point. She was planning to move in with Miles and take Avery with them. Harlan. Whitney's voice was concerned. Are you okay? He looked at her for the first time since sitting down. She'd been carrying this information for days, probably debating whether to tell him. It couldn't have been easy. I've been ready for this since the second quarter of that game, he said quietly. What game? Never mind. Harlan stood up and threw a $10 bill on the table. Whitney, I need you to do something for me. Anything. If anyone asks, anyone, you never told me about the apartment. You never told me about their custody plans. This conversation never happened. I understand. And keep documenting everything. Every time Shirley cancels plans with Avery, every time she misses a medical appointment, every time she prioritizes something else over him. Already doing that. Harlan squeezed her shoulder. Thank you. For everything. Harlan, whatever you're planning, be careful. I'm always careful. That night, Harlan sat in his home office and opened a new document on his computer. At the top, he typed custody documentation evidence file. Then he began transferring everything from his notebook into a digital format. Dates, times, witness accounts, medical records, financial transactions, 0.4 months of lies. For months of putting another man before her own son. For months of planning to destroy their family. Shirley wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd forgotten that Harlan had been trained by the best strategic minds in the world. Marines didn't just fight battles, they won them. Time to drop the mask. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a nervous-looking man in a cheap suit who kept apologizing as Harlan signed for them. Shirley had filed first, claiming irreconcilable differences and requesting full physical custody of Avery, based on Harlan's emotional instability and potential PTSD-related issues that create an unsafe environment for a child with serious medical needs. Harlan read through the documents over coffee, noting the creative interpretations of reality. According to Shirley's filing, he was controlling, emotionally distant, and had become increasingly erratic since his military service. She painted herself as the primary caregiver who'd been forced to shoulder the burden of Avery's medical care, while her husband retreated into isolation. That IT was a smart strategy. Play on stereotypes about veterans while positioning herself as the responsible parent. Too bad it was completely false. Harlan called Brian Chen's office and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. She's going for the throat, Brian said after reviewing the papers. This isn't about divorce, it's about custody. She wants to take your son. Can she win? Not if we present the facts properly. Brian leaned forward. Tell me you've been documenting everything like I suggested. Harlan pulled out a thick folder. Medical records showing he'd been present for every doctor's appointment. School pickup logs proving he handled all transportation. Hospital records from Avery's surgery showing Shirley's absence during the critical hours. This is good, Brian said, flipping through pages. Really good. But we need more, such as character witnesses, people who can testify about your relationship with Avery and her priorities. I have someone in mind. Dr. Patterson agreed to testify about Harlan's involvement in Avery's medical care. In my 15 years of pediatric cardiology, I've rarely seen a father so engaged in his child's treatment, he told Brian during their prep meeting. Mr. Knox knows every detail of his son's condition. He asks intelligent questions, follows care instructions precisely, and has never missed an appointment. What about Mrs. Knox? She's attended perhaps 30% of appointments, usually arrives late, and spends most of the time on her phone. Whitney agreed to testify about Shirley's recent behavior, though it clearly pained her. She's my sister, and I love her, she told Brian. But Avery comes first. Harlan has been that boy's rock since day one. The school principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, confirmed that Harlan handled all pickup and drop-off duties. He's the emergency contact, the one who attends parent-teacher conferences, the one who communicates with us about Avery's medical needs. I honestly couldn't tell you what Mrs. Knox looks like. Meanwhile, Shirley's lawyer, a slick downtown firm that specialized in high-net-worth divorces, was building their own case. They had Miles lined up as a character witness, ready to testify about Harlan's concerning behavior and emotional volatility. They're painting you as damaged, Brian warned. Dangerous, unable to cope with civilian life. Let them. This is serious, Harlan. If they convince a judge you're unstable, they won't. How can you be so confident? Because I have something they don't expect. The preliminary hearing was set for the following month. In the meantime, temporary custody arrangements had to be established. The judge, a stern woman named Patricia Valdez, interviewed Avery privately to understand his preferences. He wants to stay with his father, she told both legal teams afterward. He's articulate about his reasons and shows no signs of coaching. I'm granting temporary primary custody to Mr. Knox, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Knox pending the full hearing. Shirley's face went white. This wasn't how it was supposed to work. Outside the courthouse, she confronted Harlan in the parking lot. This is insane, she said. I'm his mother. You're also the person who missed his emergency surgery for a basketball game. That was one time. It was the time that mattered. We can work this out without lawyers. Without a court battle. No, we can't. What do you want, Harlan? Money? The house. I'll give you whatever you want. I want my son, and I want you to face the consequences of your choices. My choices. Shirley's voice rose. What about your choices? What about shutting me out for months? What about sleeping in the guest room? What about treating me like I don't exist? I treated you exactly like what you are. Which is what? An adulteress who put her lover before her son. The word hung in the air between them. Shirley opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. How long have you known? She asked quietly. Since that Tuesday night. Section 112, third quarter. You saw that. I saw everything. The full custody hearing began on a Monday morning in October. Judge Valdez presided over a packed courtroom both families had turned out in force, along with various witnesses and supporters. Shirley's lawyer, a man named Peterson who wore expensive suits and spoke in carefully modulated tones, presented their case first. He painted Harlan as a man struggling with the transition from military to civilian life, unable to connect emotionally with his family, increasingly isolated and controlling. Mrs. Knox has been forced to shoulder the burden of caring for a medically fragile child while her husband retreated into himself, Peterson argued. She's documented instances of emotional withdrawal, unreasonable demands for control over the child's schedule, and concerning comments about military discipline. Miles took the stand first, wearing a Navy suit that probably cost more than most people's car payments. He spoke confidently about his longtime friendship with both Harlan and Shirley, his concern for Avery's well-being, and his observations about Harlan's deteriorating mental state. He's become paranoid, Miles testified, suspicious of everyone, including his wife. He treats every conversation like an interrogation. Can you give the court specific examples? Peterson asked. He accused Shirley of lying about work meetings. He demanded to know where she was every minute of the day. He started sleeping in a separate room and refused to discuss their marriage problems. In your opinion, would these behaviors concern you if you were considering a child's welfare? Absolutely. Avery deserves a stable, loving home environment. Brian Chin's cross-examination was surgical. Mr. Redford, you testified that you're a longtime friend of both parties. How long have you known Mrs. Knox? About 15 years, since high school. And how would you characterize your relationship with her currently? Miles shifted in his seat. We're friends. Just friends. Yes. Mr. Redford, are you familiar with Section 112 at Footprint Center? What do you mean? It's a section of premium seats at the Phoenix Suns Arena. Are you familiar with it? I suppose. I've been to games there. Were you at a game in section 112 on the night of October 15th? Peterson objected. Relevance, Your Honor. I'll establish relevance, Brian said. Mr. Redford, please answer the question. I may have been at a game that night. With whom? Miles looked at Shirley, then back at Brian. I don't recall. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit A. Brian pulled out a large photograph, a frame captured from the ESPN broadcast, showing Miles and Shirley clearly visible in section 112. His arm around her chair, her hand on his leg, both laughing intimately. Mr. Redford, is this you in section 112 on October 15th? Yes. And is that Mrs. Knox beside you? Yes. At what time was this photograph taken? I don't know exactly. According to ESPN's records, it was 10:47 p.m. Mr. Redford, do you know where Avery Knox was at 10:47 p.m. on October 15th? Miles said nothing. He was in surgery, Mr. Redford. Emergency heart surgery. While you and Mrs. Knox were enjoying courtside seats, her 8-year-old son was having a device implanted to save his life. The courtroom was dead silent. Now, you testified that you're just friends with Mrs. Knox. Is it normal for you to attend basketball games with married friends while their children are in emergency surgery? I didn't know about the surgery. Mrs. Knox didn't mention that her son was in critical condition when she chose to attend a game with you. Miles looked trapped. She may have mentioned something, but it didn't seem important enough to leave the game. Objection. Peterson was on his feet. Sustained, Judge Valdez said, but the damage was done. Brian continued methodically through the evidence. Text messages between Miles and Shirley. Credit card records showing they'd had dinner together dozens of times. Hotel receipts. Instagram posts from the same locations at the same times. Mr. Redford, how long have you been having an affair with Mrs. Knox? We're not having an affair. Then how do you explain sharing a hotel room at the Scottsdale Marriott on 6 separate occasions over the past 3 months? Peterson objected again, but Judge Valdez allowed the question. I don't have to explain anything, Miles said. Actually, you do. You're under oath, and you've inserted yourself into a custody dispute by testifying about Mr. Knox's fitness as a father. So I'll ask again, how long have you been having sexual relations with Mrs. Knox? Miles looked like he wanted to disappear. About 4 months. Thank you. No further questions. Shirley took the stand next, looking pale but determined. Peterson walked her through her version of events of marriage that had deteriorated after Harlan's military service, a husband who'd become distant and controlling, her efforts to save their relationship. I love my son more than anything in the world, she testified. Everything I've done has been for his benefit. Can you explain your whereabouts on the evening of October 15th? I was at a basketball game with a friend. I know how it looks, but I didn't know Avery's surgery would be that serious. Harlan said they were just running some tests. Did you try to leave the game when you learned about the surgery? By the time I got his call, it was too late. I came to the hospital as soon as I could. Brian's cross-examination was devastating. Mrs. Knox, you testified that you didn't know the surgery would be serious. Is that accurate? Yes. Let me read from your husband's call log. At 9:30 p.m., he called you and said, quote, Avery's in critical condition. They're prepping him for surgery now. Does that sound like routine tests to you? I was confused. The music was loud. The music was loud at a basketball game. So you couldn't understand that your son was in critical condition? I panicked. I wasn't thinking clearly. But you were thinking clearly enough to remain at the game for another hour and a half. I made a mistake. Mrs. Knox, how many of Avery's medical appointments have you attended in the past year? Shirley hesitated. I don't know exactly. Dr. Patterson keeps detailed records. According to his files, Avery has had 16 appointments in the past year. You've attended 5. That's 31%. Are you aware of this statistic? I work. I can't always. Your husband also works. In fact, he works longer hours than you do. Yet he's attended 100% of appointments. Can you explain this discrepancy? Harlan is more organized with that stuff. Is that what you call ensuring your child receives proper medical care? Being organized? Peterson objected, but Judge Valdez was clearly following every word. Mrs. Knox, You testify that you love your son more than anything. If that's true, why did you prioritize a basketball game over his emergency surgery? I made a bad decision, but one mistake doesn't make me a bad mother. One mistake? Let's talk about patterns. In the past 6 months, how many school events have you attended? I don't keep count. According to school records, 0. How many parent-teacher conferences Harlan usually handles? 0. How many times have you been the emergency contact when the school called about Avery's health? That's not fair. Harlan is always. The answer is 0, Mrs. Knox. But you've attended approximately 30 social events during that same time period. Dinners, parties, basketball games. How do you reconcile claiming to love your son more than anything while consistently choosing social activities over his needs? Shirley was crying now. You don't understand. Being a mother is hard. Sometimes you need what? You need to have an affair while your son recovers from heart surgery. Objection. Sustained. Mr. Chun, rephrase. Mrs. Knox, have you been having an affair with Miles Redford? That's not relevant to. It's absolutely relevant to your credibility and your priorities. Have you been having sexual relations with Miles Redford while married to the plaintiff? Shirley looked at her lawyer, then at the judge, then back at Brian. Yes. For how long? For months. During which time your son had multiple medical crises requiring emergency care. Yes. During which time you missed crucial medical appointments. Yes. During which time you chose to attend social events rather than care for your medically fragile child? Yes. No further questions. The custody hearing concluded on a Friday afternoon. Judge Valdez said she would review all evidence and issue her decision within 2 weeks. That weekend, Harlan sat at his computer and wrote carefully. Not for lawyers or judges this time, for the court of public opinion. They found a local parenting blog called Phoenix Families that had gained popularity among suburban parents. The blog accepted anonymous submissions about parenting challenges and family experiences. Harlan's post was titled, "When Basketball Matters More Than Your Child's Life." He wrote, "I'm sharing this anonymously because I'm still processing what happened to my family. 2 weeks ago, my 8-year-old son collapsed during dinner. He has a congenital heart defect, and this was his worst episode yet. I rushed him to the emergency room while my wife was out with friends. The doctor said he needed immediate surgery, a procedure to implant a device that would regulate his heartbeat and save his life. I called my wife to tell her our son was in critical condition and going into emergency surgery. Her response? But I have NBA tickets tonight. I have to go, right? She stayed for the entire game. Our son's surgery lasted 3 hours. She showed up at the hospital after midnight, smelling like beer and someone else's cologne, that I don't know how to process this. I don't know how someone prioritizes courtside seats over their child's life. I don't know how to explain to my son why mommy wasn't there when he woke up from surgery. That I'm sharing this because I need parents to understand something. Your children will remember your priorities. They'll remember when you chose to be there and when you chose to be somewhere else. They'll remember what mattered to you when they needed you most. My son is recovering well. His mother is moving in with the man she was at the game with. I have full custody and my son is safe, but I'll never forget the moment I realized that basketball mattered more to her than our child's life." He posted it Sunday evening, WY Monday morning. It had been shared 847 times, WY Wednesday. It had been picked up by local news stations and parenting websites across the country, WY Friday. It had gone viral on Twitter and Instagram. The story was perfect for social media outrage, a mother who chose sports over her sick child, a father fighting for custody, a clear moral divide that invited immediate judgment. Phoenix Families received hundreds of comments. "This breaks my heart. That poor child deserves so much better. I can't imagine choosing anything over my child's emergency surgery. The father is a hero. The mother is a monster. Hope this man gets full custody. That woman shouldn't be allowed near children." Local news stations picked up the story. Channel 12 ran a segment called "When Parents Fail," a Valley father's heartbreaking story. Shirley's employer, a trendy lifestyle brand called Lux Living, received dozens of angry emails and social media comments. Their Instagram posts were flooded with comments like, "Do you support employees who abandon sick children? and boycott Lux Living until they fire the basketball mom. By the following week, Lux Living had restructured their social media team, and Shirley was out of a job. The Miles car dealerships faced similar pressure. Someone had connected the dots and identified him as the man in the basketball story. Reviews on Google and Yelp turned brutal. Would you buy a car from someone who helps destroy families? Miles Redford cares more about dating married women than customer service. Dishonest business owner. Dishonest person. Sales dropped 30% in 2 weeks. Miles had to remove his name from advertising and hire a reputation management company. Shirley tried calling Harlan multiple times. He didn't answer. She showed up at the house on a Tuesday evening while Avery was at a friend's house. "You did this," she said when Harlan opened the door. "That blog post was you. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. The details are too specific. No one else knows exactly what I said on the phone." Harlan shrugged. "Maybe you shouldn't have said it. My life is ruined. I lost my job. Miles is talking about moving to California. Everyone in town thinks I'm a monster. Are you? I made a mistake. You made a choice. Multiple choices. For months. I want to see Avery. You have supervised visitation on Saturdays. 2 to 5 p.m. That's not enough. He's my son. Then you should have acted like his mother." Shirley started crying. "Please, Harlan. Can't we work something out? I know I screwed up, but what? But I should forgive you? But I should pretend this didn't happen? But I should let you explain to our son why mommy's boyfriend was more important than his surgery. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I love him." "No, you don't. You love the idea of him. You love what he represents. But you don't love him enough to actually prioritize him." "That's not true." "Then prove me wrong." "Oh wait, you already did. In front of the entire world." Judge Valdez called both legal teams into her chambers on a Thursday morning. She looked tired, like she'd spent weeks reviewing evidence and struggling with a decision that should have been simple. "I've reviewed all testimony, evidence, and character witnesses," she began. "This case involves serious allegations of parental fitness, and I don't take these decisions lightly." Harlan sat perfectly still. Shirley gripped her lawyer's arm. "However, the evidence in this case is overwhelming. Mrs. Knox has demonstrated a pattern of neglect regarding her son's medical and educational needs. She has consistently prioritized social activities over parental responsibilities. Most concerning is her absence during a life-threatening medical emergency." Peterson tried to interrupt. "Your Honor, if I may, you may not. I'm also troubled by Mrs. Knox's dishonesty during testimony. Her initial denial of an extramarital affair, followed by reluctant admission, suggests a willingness to deceive this court." Judge Valdez turned to her paperwork. "Mr. Knox has provided extensive documentation of his role as primary caregiver. Medical professionals, school officials, and family members have testified consistently about his dedication to his son's welfare." She looked up at both parties. "I'm awarding full physical and legal custody to Mr. Knox. Mrs. Knox will be granted supervised visitation every other Saturday from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., with the possibility of increased visitation pending completion of a parenting course and 6 months of family counseling." Shirley made a sound like she'd been punched. "Furthermore, I'm ordering the division of marital assets according to Arizona community property law with the following exception. Given Mr. Knox's 70% ownership stake in the marital residence, he will retain the house. Mrs. Knox will receive 30% of its current market value." Peterson was frantically taking notes. "I'm also awarding Mr. Knox the premium seat licenses for Section 112 at Footprint Center, purchased with joint marital funds. These licenses have significant resale value and will help offset the financial burden of single parenthood." Harlan almost smiled. "Almost. This concludes the custody proceedings. Mr. Knox, you have full legal authority to make all decisions regarding your son's medical care, education, and welfare. Mrs. Knox, your visitation is contingent on compliance with court orders and completion of required counseling." Outside the courthouse, Shirley tried one last time. "Harlan, please, don't take him away from me. I didn't take him away. You gave him away. Every time you chose something else over him, you gave him away a little more. I can change. Maybe. But you'll do it on your own time, not his. What about the seat licenses? You don't even like basketball. You're right. I don't. The next day, Harlan called a ticket broker and sold the Section 112 licenses for $80,000. Premium seats with a waiting list. People paid serious money for the privilege of sitting exactly where Shirley had prioritized the game over their son's life. 3 weeks later, Harlan met Shirley at Steel Indian School Park for her first official visitation. She completed her parenting course and started counseling, though both seemed like boxes to check rather than genuine attempts at change. Avery ran toward them across the playground, healthy and happy. His heart device had eliminated all the episodes that used to terrify Harlan. The boy could run and play like any other kid now. "Hi, Mom," he said, hugging Shirley politely but without the desperate attachment she'd expected. "Hi, baby. How's school?" "Good. I'm doing a report on Mars. Dad's helping me build a model of the solar system." "That sounds fun." They walked toward the playground equipment. Avery immediately started climbing on the monkey bars, something that would have been impossible before his surgery. "He's doing well," Shirley said quietly. "Yeah, he is. I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I'm proud of you for fighting for him." Harlan studied her face. She looked smaller somehow, like the consequences of her choices had physically diminished her. "It didn't have to be like this," she continued. "You're right. It didn't. I mean, we could have worked it out. Gone to counseling. Fixed things. No, we couldn't have." "Why not?" Harlan watched Avery swing across the monkey bars, his face bright with concentration and joy. "Because you made sure it was like this. Every choice you made led here. Every lie, every priority, every time you picked something else over him. One mistake. Not one mistake. 100 small betrayals that led to one big one. I love him. I know you do. But love isn't enough if you don't act like it." Avery finished his circuit and ran back to them, slightly out of breath, but grinning. "Dad, can we go see the ducks?" "Sure, buddy." They walked toward the pond, Avery chattering about his school project. Shirley listened and responded appropriately, but Harlan could see the distance between them. It wasn't anger or resentment, it was simply the natural consequence of months of absence during the most crucial time in a child's life. When visitation ended at 5 p.m., Avery hugged his mother goodbye. "I'll see you in 2 weeks," she said. "Okay. Bye, Mom." He ran to Harlan's truck without looking back. As they drove home, Avery asked, "Dad, why does Mom seem sad?" "People get sad when they realize they made bad choices." "Is she sorry?" "I think so. Will she get better?" "Maybe. That's up to her." Avery nodded and went back to looking out the window. At 8 years old, he understood more than he should have had to. But he was safe now. That was what mattered. The moving truck arrived on a Saturday morning in December. Harlan and Avery had spent 2 weeks packing their life into boxes, sorting through 8 years of memories and deciding what belonged in their new chapter. To Carter's Austin office had welcomed Harlan with a 15% pay increase and a promise of rapid advancement. The Texas housing market meant they could afford a bigger place, a house with a pool that Avery could use safely now that his heart was regulated. "You excited?" Harlan asked as they loaded the last boxes. "Yeah, but also nervous." "About what?" "Making new friends. Starting at a new school." "You'll do great. You're smart and funny and kind. People will like you." "What if they don't?" "Then they're idiots, and you'll find better people." Avery laughed. "You can't call people idiots, Dad. I can call them whatever I want. I'm the dad." They drove through Phoenix one last time, past Avery's school, past the hospital where he'd had surgery, past the neighborhoods where Shirley was rebuilding her life in a small apartment near her sister. The visitation schedule would continue. Avery would fly back to Phoenix once a month for weekends with his mother. It wasn't ideal, but it was workable. And if Shirley truly committed to change, maybe they could adjust the arrangement. But Harlan wasn't holding his breath. Their new house in Austin was everything he'd hoped for. Quiet neighborhood, good schools, a backyard where Avery could play without Harlan worrying about cardiac episodes. "This is going to be good," Avery said, exploring his new room. "Yeah, it is." Spring came early to Texas. Harlan settled into his new job. Avery made friends at school, and slowly they built a routine that felt sustainable and peaceful. In April, the Spurs made the playoffs. Carter had season tickets and invited Harlan to a game. "I don't really follow basketball," Harlan said. "Come on, Avery will love it." They went on a Tuesday night. The arena was electric, packed with fans wearing black and silver. Avery had never been to a professional game, and his excitement was infectious. "This is so cool," he said, watching warm-ups from their seats. Good seats. Not section 112 level, but close enough to see the players' expressions, close enough to feel the energy of the crowd. During a timeout in the third quarter, the arena camera panned across the crowd for fan reactions. It lingered on Harlan and Avery, both wearing Spurs jerseys, sharing nachos, and laughing at something on the court. For exactly 4 seconds, they were on television. A father and son enjoying a basketball game together. Harlan smiled. Not because of victory or revenge or justice served, but because his son was healthy and happy and safe. And sometimes, that's the only victory that matters.